Hey, welcome.
All right, I think I'm gonna get us going.
Let's do it.
Great. Okay, hey, morning everyone. Morning. So we wish we didn't have to be here. We wish you didn't have to be here, but thank you for being here. So Spencer and I have each been doing lots of pro bono work with folks who are affected by all of this in the general social sector, international development in particular. And I've personally done 150 pro bono coaching sessions one-on-one and counting, and we're starting to hear trend after trend after trend. So some of this might feel familiar to you. So we're hearing everything from, I really loved my job. I had found my dream job. This was what I wanted to do my whole life. And now I have to change that. And how do I do that? I don't know what's next. I've been looking even before this all happened, and this is a continuation of that search. We've been hearing, I'm not fully impacted yet, but I'm a little worried I might be, and I have to start thinking about my next steps. We've been thinking about how does skills transfer across industries. We've had people looking private sector. We've had people looking at what's this new social sector looking like when there's not the big donor funding anymore. We've heard everything across the board, the personal, the tactical next steps, and we're going to try to get into both of those today as we talk through our system that we developed together. At the core of it, what we've been hearing from people is, how do I stay true to my values and decide on next steps? So it's both values and it's tactics, and that's a lot of what we're going to try to bring to the table together. So Spencer?
Well, first off, thank you for being here on a Friday morning. Thank you for showing up for something like this. I'm curious, just, who is in the room? Maybe who's already applied for something? And maybe like show of hands. Okay, fantastic. Who's already had an interview come through? Okay, excellent. Anyone who's already had an offer come through where you're like, maybe, yes, see? It still happens. People are still getting jobs, right? Amazing. I've been thinking a lot about that. Is the sector dead? And the answer is no. There's the tough times right now, but there are people getting hired. We're working with clients, and there is reason to hope. But the other question I had for y'all was, who thought they were going to be job hunting in 2025? Who'd plan to do this? Yeah.
Few? Yeah.
A couple.
So,
yeah, great.
Yeah.
So it's whether you planned to do it or not, I hope that you get some value out of what we have to share today. Dan's based in Boston. I'm from Michigan, but I'm normally based in France. So I've flown across an ocean to give this talk. I hope there's someone in this room who can benefit from what we're going to share today. I hope that's you. And let's get started.
Yeah, sounds great. So Spencer and I do a lot of work together. So we have our own practices. So I have my own coaching practice and consulting practice. Spencer has a talent agency, so basically a reverse recruiting shop of working with job seekers through this whole process. And then we do some work together where we both do this kind of reverse recruiting and the coaching portion of it. And we had a client that we'd like to share a story of just to help you ground a lot of the concepts we're doing, so they're not this theoretical, here's a shiny slide with some ideas on it, how these actually work in practice, so you can envision your situation of people as we're going through. So this was a client we had last year, and we're going to call her Maribel. And she had started off her career in full private sector. So we're changing some of the details here, but basically oil and gas, kind of making these high-level deals, big finance kind of stuff. And she had a change of heart and a change of career and a change of life into the social sector. So she decided to leave oil and gas, started working for like an education type organization, right? So she was doing a lot of the kind of program management, that kind of side of things. A lot might be familiar to people, a lot of like project managers, program managers, and then made her way over to the world of foundations and grant making and all of that. And then she had a foundation that suddenly changed all of their grant making strategy and dropped the entire space that she was working on. And this is kind of a harbinger for a lot of what's happening now for folks. But all of a sudden she was doing a great job. She was closing, lots of amazing work and deals and showing results and showing impact, and then no more. And she didn't know what to do, right? So she went home. She still had to go into the office actually for a month after that, and still show up every day, and knowing that the job didn't exist after that period of time. And just all of this kind of personal side of it, right? That's so trying, it's so taxing, as many of you have seen in real life in this situation. And what she did was what so many people I've talked to do at the beginning, which was go on the online job boards, find 50 jobs that she could theoretically do, send off 50 applications, hope for the best, and she got nothing. And it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. And then she said, okay, I need something different. And that's when she came across us, reached out, and we started working together. So we're going to pick up this story as we go through to illustrate how this actually works for a real life example that is, again, a harbinger of some of the things that many of you have been experiencing.
So Maribel, we have permission to share, the broad story beats of our work with her. And this story, I'll just spoil it a bit. It does have a happy ending, otherwise we wouldn't be telling it. But Maribel's typical of like a kind of job seeker that we meet all the time, which is just, what I've labeled on here is the type 2, the easy applier. Like job search, it's a numbers game. All I got to do is wake up every morning, click the button 20 or 30 times, get my resume out to as many people as I can. And the problem we see with this kind of approach is that it's too broad. It's not focused, it's not targeted enough, and so you waste a lot of time, And if you apply for the wrong jobs, you can not just apply to 50 or 100, you could do this infinitely. You could do this, till the end of time if the job search is not targeted enough. And for many of us, we do this because it feels productive. It seems like the right thing to do. Like we can, go to bed each day feeling like, yeah, I did what I needed to do in my job hunt. And I know that I'm making progress. And it's, Cal Newport, he calls this like pseudo-productivity. It's that stuff we do that feels productive, but maybe actually isn't. About half of the people that I talk to, that's sort of their starting point for job hunt. The other half are what I've called like the perfectionist, which is, there is one ideal job, and I'm only going to apply for that job, and I'm going to find a way to eliminate everything else from contention. And so, like, I spend a lot of time thinking about myself, thinking about my resume rewrite. I spend a lot of time scrolling LinkedIn, but maybe not that much time actually applying for things. And the other thing I see with this profile all the time is that, oh man, does it hurt to get rejection hurts for everybody. I feel it when my clients, we're going out for something and it doesn't come through. It hurts me, and I'm not even up for the job, right? I'm just like side by side with them. And for these folks, the search is too narrow, right? We're missing opportunities. So the method that we've seen really work for people is this type 3. I don't know if it's natural for anybody, but great job hunt is matchmaking, right? I need a job that needs me as much as I need it. I need to find a place that I really belong. I need a team that I just fit in like a puzzle piece. And what I found, what works with the clients that Dan and I work with, what we've heard from people who are getting hired, there is like a right way to approach this, and it is in networking. We're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like, but your network is so valuable in terms of actually putting you in front of the right opportunities. Networking isn't cutting in line, it's finding the right line to stand in. You can click easy apply and not go anywhere, 50 or 100 times. You're not going to have 50 networking conversations that go nowhere. It's just not possible. The people won't return your calls. They won't meet with you. By having a people-focused search, a match-focused search, you automatically get sorted towards the right opportunities. So it is scary. It's a bit vulnerable. But in our work, this is what we've seen is the most direct path to the right job is through your network. And if you remember nothing else that we say today, please take that with you and know that time you spent talking to people, asking for help, being on your hunt with your team, with your community, that's that's going to likely lead you somewhere productive. And it might not feel natural. I very rarely meet folks who are, that's their starting point. It's like, you know what I love networking for my job hunt. That's exactly what I want to do. But that's what works. Anyway, let's move on to the next slide. Yeah.
And by the way, we're going to be sharing all these slides out, so don't feel like you have to be furiously taking down every single note, too.
So yeah, the point here, the job search is really about discovering where I belong, right? A lot of us are in jobs, we're in jobs before where our work was about optimization, making things run as well as they can, or like a little bit 1% better than they were before. But in the job hunt, particularly if you're transitioning sectors, you are trying to learn something. You are trying to figure out where you fit. Many of us don't know ourselves as well as we need to find the right fit, and we don't know the market as well as we need to. So the job hunt is really a process of discovering both of those things. What do I really want to do next, and what will the market pay me for? I'm based in France. I love to cook and eat, and again, I could apply to be a sous chef at every restaurant in Lyon. I will never get hired there. They won't do it. They won't value my skill set, all the time I've spent watching cooking YouTube videos, all the time I've spent putting around in my kitchen, my bad French. They will be appreciative of it, but they will never, ever, ever hire me, right? If I wanted to go work in a kitchen, I would need to do a stage. I would need to go and sort of find a different entry point. But that's not a job that I can land today. Similarly, there's a lot of other things that the market would pay me to do. There's lots of places that would hire me as a recruiter. This is what I was doing before. And I have no desire to do that, right? I don't want to, helps negotiate someone down from 90 to 85 to save $5,000 from the employer. I want to help people maximize their salary. I don't want to be on that side of the table. I want to be helping job seekers. So I'm not saying abandon what you want. You don't have to do only what the market wants. It's that intersection. Where is that thing that brings you joy, that helps you achieve your career goals, but is aligned with what's out there on the market? We have two big ideas for you that cover, the job hunt. Two ideas that we'll cover over the course of this talk, and I hope you can remember as you are working on this in the coming weeks. And that is hunt like a hero, apply like a scientist.
So this is the core of the job search, and there's these two concurrent processes, and they happen throughout the whole job search and at the same time. And this is part of the reason why job search advice is so all over the place, or can feel so all over the place. It's often very geared toward one or the other. So I come from the world of coaching, and it's so much hunt like a hero and so little apply like a scientist that it can be unhelpful for people. And Spencer's world of this, the actual tactical job search advice and the recruiting expertise and all of that is often so much on apply like a scientist that it misses the personal elements, right? This is a transformational journey. And what we found, and the reason we love working together so much, and we've actually crossed into kind of the other side of these a lot. So I've really picked up a lot of the apply like a scientist. Spencer's picked up a lot of the hunt like a hero. And it's because they're both critically important. You have to be doing them both at the same time throughout your whole search. So we're going to get into specifics on what these actually mean, but Spencer, please.
Yeah, one speaking to what's that inner process? What's the emotional journey of finding a job? What's the reflective work within myself that I need to do to figure out where I need to go? And how do I understand what's on the market? If we think about the two sides of this, we had our Venn diagram. Inner or outer, market and self, the type 1, type 2. This is the dichotomy we're talking about. And again, we'll explain a little bit more what we mean, but yeah.
Let's start hunt like a hero. So there's a reason the hero's journey, which many of you might have come across, right, is so common in every movie and book and TV show and everything that is worth watching and reading and listening to and all of that. It's because it reflects a fundamental human experience of transformation, right? You're you have a disruption, you go out into the world, you find new things, you learn and grow, build a team along the way, all this kind of stuff. And then by the end of it, through all these ups and downs, you come out better. So that is a lot of the Hunt Like a Hero process, and we'll get into the specific beats of the hero's journey for the job search. So first is a successful job hunt is like a great story, right? There's all of these different elements to it. It's so personal. You're going out in the world, you're finding, learning, growing. It's a journey of transformation. It's going to have these false starts and near misses. And then the point when it feels like all is lost is generally right before the actual success comes. And there's so many things that people do throughout this that really get in the way of the job hunt, and we'll talk to those after. So for the job search, it's basically in 3 acts. So
many of you might be exactly here, you know?
yes.
I would
So we're at I hate this crowd right now. But seriously, many of you may be in different places on this, right? So starting with I hate this is the inciting crisis in a story. We'll walk through Maribel's in a bit to help ground this, but you're seeing the kind of emotional roller coaster that this is inciting here, and the key is that this is normal. This is how it goes. It has to go this way. It's not a linear process. There's no shortcut to the very end, and then you don't have to go through this journey of transformation. It's going to be really awful a lot of the time, and then there's going to be highs and lows, and you're going to come out better on the other side of the end of this. And we've seen this over and over, and almost everyone comes out better on the other side of this, but it is this real process and a real journey, and it's important to know that. So let's walk through this with Maribel's story. So the inciting crisis for her was the foundation cutting the entire type of work she was doing, right? So it's disrupted her normal paradigm of this is work that I'm doing, I'm really good at it, I enjoy doing it, I care about it. So many of you might be feeling very similar stuff, right? Next thing is meet your guides. So this is when she, after the 40, 50 applications in 3 weeks and no luck, she found us and started working with us. We're not saying you have to work with us. We're saying meet people who know something about the job search, the modern job search process. Surround yourself with friends, family, colleagues, coaches, advisors, whatever that looks like for you.
This
Find
is a time
people
to
who help
ask
guide
for
you.
help.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Next thing is face your fears. So for Maribel, one of her big fears was that, I don't know where I'm going to be next. I don't think I'm a technical person, right? I don't think I have enough of technical knowledge to be doing some of the things that I want to be doing. So I really need to be only looking at the kind of administrative side of things. And that was a huge fear, and that can come from being in these settings that so value technical expertise that you feel like you're not quite ready. It's some of that imposter syndrome type stuff. I'm not going to be ready for this. Then it's finding your strengths. So it's actually going through and understanding what is your unique superpower, right? What do you do so much better than the average person that is going to be a huge advantage for you in the job search? And this is, finding your strengths has both that kind of personal confidence boosting angle to it, which is really key, and it can sound simple and it can sound a little bit trite, right, of just getting your mindset right and your confidence right and all of that. It also has this really serious advantage for you in if you can figure out what you honestly do so well and bring that to the table. And it's something that's very hard to do for yourself. So this is a time where you want to be using assessments like a strengths finder. You want to be doing exercises around your story and your highs and your lows. We have an exercise that we can send out to folks after too on this called The Power of My Strengths that Spencer uses with his clients. And what started coming out of this is the relationship building, the communication strength for Maribel. That was something she took for granted. She's got fish and water with it. And she was an amazing networker. She had really trusted relationships with people. She was able to really communicate in a clear way, was able to understand a lot of both the deeply technical work, but also talking to anyone, right? So talking to people on the funder side, all of this kind of stuff. So these kind of strengths were really coming up. Then from there, you go into brave the unknown. So this is when you you've done all of this personal reflection work to start, and now it's time to put it into practice. You can't stay at the reflection exercises stage. It takes actually getting it into the job hunt, and I think almost everyone here has started doing that, right? So getting actually into the world, into the search. Getting help from your team. So this is the time to, not necessarily experts, but just other people who are going through a similar situation. So many of you in this room for each other, your friends, your family, your former colleagues, just anyone who's in a community who can help you is key to get them on your side. Think of this as kind of your inner circle, your super team to the hero's journey metaphor. So this was what Maribel did, was surrounded herself with lots of former colleagues and friends who really knew what she could do, were able to be there for her, to keep her mindset right as she went through this journey, to give her honest feedback along the way. Really, really, really important. And then we get into this try, fail, learn, repeat. So we're going to save this part of her story for Apply Like a Scientist, because this middle section, this Act 2 of The Hunt Like a Hero, is where Apply Like a Scientist comes in. So we have, it's easy to say, try, fail, learn, repeat, and we know that that's not helpful, right? So we're going to give you very specific, very tangible, tactical steps that are based on our experience helping job seekers for this later on in the presentation as part of Apply Like a Scientist. And then end of Act 2, this is the dark night of the soul. This is the all is lost moment, right? And the key is, this is part of the process. This is it doesn't feel that way. It feels like everything I'm doing is wrong and I'm never going to get what I'm after here. And often it's that darkest moment before the dawn, so to speak, of actually finding your fit. And then from there, the rest of the process takes care of itself. So it is a thing that a lot of people spend a ton of time focusing on: the interview prep, on the negotiations, on reviewing the offer. All of that stuff is really important. We have some really tactical advice for you on that we can also share after. But all of this comes after this moment of discovering your true fit, and that's the story beats of how this process generally plays out.
Yeah, so some of you may be like, I don't know. You know, for me, I've always been a bit, I'm not like a really touchy-feely or woo-woo kind of guy. And I think when I started doing this work, I wasn't so prepared for how emotional the typical job hunt is for a lot of people. Like, you're putting yourself out there, you're having these highs and lows, these up and downs. And, you know, acknowledging that and dealing with that, you know, taking steps in order to take care of yourself in an emotionally taxing, difficult situation. It took me a long time to learn that and to work with clients to help them do that as well. We developed this model in part to really help folks zero in on this, because in my experience, people want to skip over this part. You know, they're like, I don't want to figure out what I'm good at. That sounds hard. I'm just gonna apply for a bunch of stuff. I don't want to think about like all the hard stuff that might hold me back. That's scary. Let me just, keep doing the same thing over and over again. I don't want to confront these things that I believe about myself or about the job market. That seems hard. Let me do something else. It's a very natural human instinct, but the advice here is that we really do. You know, it's hard, but it is the most direct path to a great new job. And so, do you want to keep, pointlessly applying for stuff, pointlessly scrolling on LinkedIn, or do you want to get back to work? Like, even though it is a hard thing, I think it's worth your time. And what I have found with clients as we've gone on this journey together is that often it's a chance to really find this thing. Often you start talking to people about your strengths. You do fact-finding on yourself. You have an opportunity to do this work and find out from people who've worked with you in the past, what makes me so good at my job? What did you really love about working with me? You go and you probably don't know what this is today. Many of us don't know ourselves nearly as well as we think that we do, and we're pleasantly surprised by what comes back. If we ask our former colleagues, our former managers, what made me incredible at that job? In my experience doing this, done this 50 times now with different clients one-on-one, they always discover something pleasantly surprising. And they discover something that's very useful for the job hunt. So I would push you guys to really do this emotional work. Do the work that is looking inside, understanding what are my great strengths and what might be holding me back from getting the thing that I might want in the next job. All right, great. Apply like a scientist. So again, we're talking about the job hunt is fundamentally a discovery process. How do discoveries get made? It is hypothesis, experiment, data collection, analysis, repeat, right? Every application, every conversation, every bit of feedback is data that's helping you refine your search. With Maribel, we did a really interesting exercise during our work together where we looked at everything that she had applied to on one side and everything that she had applied to that she was really excited about. All the jobs that she had gone out for that she would have been so excited to have. That was one list. Then we had a second list was who called you back for any sort of interview or exercise. Didn't have to be not necessarily an offer, anyone who engaged with you. That was the second list. And we looked and analyzed what were in common on both those lists. So what we saw is that she was getting a lot of callbacks for people work, human resources work, kind of administrative kind of jobs. She was also getting callbacks for program stuff. And but the administrative roles and the HR roles, they didn't make it on the list of the jobs that I'm really excited about. She had put in applications for those because it felt like it was the right thing to do, but it wasn't really the kind of job that she felt so enamored to have, right? It wasn't the sort of thing that she was hoping to land, and it just felt like the kind of job that she needed to apply to. And in fact, we got to one point in the process with one of these HR roles where they made her an offer. And she came, we were having a discussion about it, and it was the first time in her life that she'd ever considered not signing a job offer, where she had gone through a process, got to the point where a job offer was tendered, and where she wasn't so sure if she should sign it. And ultimately we had a conversation with Dan, and she decided to keep hunting. She was getting some consulting work, and so for the first time in her life, she decided, no, I'm going to hold out for something that might be more aligned with my best fit. Can we advance here to the next slide here? This often gets attributed to Albert Einstein. It's actually Narcotics Anonymous. But if we do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, what is that? And I think I want you to see this apply like a scientist as an alternative to the insane approach that is often our starting point. If we don't do this reflection, we don't look at, hey, what have I applied for? Who is calling me back? What do these things have in common? What can I learn? What is the market trying to tell me? If we do not learn and instead we just keep going at it in the same way over and over again, we shouldn't be surprised by the results that we get. Okay, so again, often applying this, what makes it hard to apply this framework for folks is we take this very personally. I was a recruiter before I did this. I've interviewed 1,000 people. I've made a lot of job offers. I have never had a personal, I've never made a job offer or a rejection decision based on personally liking somebody or not. It was always about, does this person fit the role? It was not personal for me. And so when we apply for something and we get rejected, it feels like it's personal about us. Like I'm being rejected. They didn't advance me to the next round because they didn't like me. And I promise you, I don't know, I can't speak for every recruiter on planet Earth, but for the most of us, we're just trying to do a job. And so all we're looking at is the fitness for the job. And if you can keep that in mind, those rejections can feel a little bit less painful, and you can learn something really useful. The other thing on here is that people are going to say a lot of really nice things. We so wish that we get the form letter rejection, and it doesn't say anything helpful, and we're just like, damn it, if these people would just tell me what I'm doing wrong, I could do something different. And I would just say that in my experience, they can't give you the kind of feedback that you're looking for. The recruiter or the hiring manager that is rejecting you from a process, they can't tell you something which is going to kind of take you to the promised land. You've got to do that reflection for yourself. And the feedback you can be mindful of is what happens. What do people do? Who calls you back for an interview? Who is willing to take your call? Who's willing to get a coffee with you? That is the more instructive and useful feedback. That's the feedback that we can take on board and do something helpful for your search. And that's more valuable than any canned response that you would get. And I remember having to write sort of feedback up for candidates, especially those who are at the late stage of the process. And we just tried to find something that we could share with people that wouldn't get us sued. And so often they're not going to tell you the real story, because the real story is kind of nuts anyway. Like, there's all this stuff that's happening in an interview process which has not a damn thing to do with you. And so don't feel like you need that feedback to move forward. The feedback's what happens. And then finally, it's iterative. It's a learning process. We get people who come to us in like a introductory call, and it's sort of, what should I do? Where should I go? And sometimes I have an idea. I have a hypothesis about where you might fit, but I don't know the answer at the start either. Nobody does. We have to find the answer by going through the process. And every application that we send out has the chance to tell us something interesting and useful. It takes time, it takes action, it takes experimentation. So that's it. The model itself. We've got our fit hypotheses. We have this idea. I could be a program manager at a foundation focused on climate. I could be a project manager at a big corporate entity. I could be a recruiter at a social enterprise. We have a sense about where we could go. We validate that with our networking. We see, do the people who know us best see us in that kind of work? Do the people who have worked with us in the past, do they buy that? Do the people who are hiring for these kind of roles want to talk to us? Headhunters, recruiters, people that we know from our network who might be in that space. Then, at this point, that's when we work on our materials, right? We build our materials towards the hypothesis. This is where I think I need to be. It's not, you don't necessarily have to rewrite your resume for every single role, but if you have very different fit hypotheses, different types of roles where you could fit in, the HR-focused role or the more programmatic thing, you probably need a couple sets of materials. You put in your applications, you have the conversations, and then you see what happens. You review your results, and you see who's calling you back, who's really interested in you, where does that line up with what's interesting to you, and you refine. And over the course of your job hunt, this doesn't have to take months or years or whatever, but you learn and you discover where is it that you fit. So it's never going to be 100% yes on any hypothesis, but if you're getting callbacks more than 10% of the time for these kind of jobs, you're probably on the right track. So even success, it's mostly failure. Even success, even yes is mostly made of no. So it's never going to be the point where every single thing you go out for, they're going to call you back for an interview. But certainly, when you see that difference, the kind of jobs, the sort of trends that emerge from this analysis, that tells you that you've discovered your fit, and that tells you that you don't need to waste your time on anything but those jobs that are within that fit which you have learned.
So let's get into these steps really brass tacks, right? So it's great to see the broader diagram of how this all works. Really, really, really tactically, what do I do next is what I'd say 70% of people I've met with have asked, right? Like, what are my next steps? How do I actually put this into practice? The hunt like a hero stuff is all super important. That's a broad, long, extended process over your whole job search, this personal transformation. The apply like a scientist is immediate, tactical, applicable next steps. So first step here is identifying what we call your 3 fit hypotheses. So Spencer spoke to this a bit of how do you actually start this whole cycle, right? And it's thinking like a scientist, you have to have hypotheses. So these are going to be both specific, because they have to be specific, or else you can't really test them. It doesn't help to say, I want to do like anything in project management in the private sector. It's impossible to test if you're actually getting feedback on that, because a project manager at a law firm is different than a project manager at a construction company, is different than a project manager at Google. And it just doesn't track across these. And you may have gotten 7 rejections for project manager construction company, and that doesn't mean anything about this other kind of a sector. And very similar to your previous spaces, the sector matters, and it's really important, and it can be tough, especially for generalists, to focus on that for now. So
yeah, the job market is made of so many tiny, tiny niches, right? And so the niche that you're in, people underestimate how well of a fit you are for the things in your niche and how quickly that falls off. So this is the other reason why networking is so valuable. You might be, what I found when we had to study this in an old job is that people who were referred, employee referrals that came in, we were hiring them 20 times as often as folks who were just applying on the website. 20 times. And part of that was, some of that invariably was bias. It was like, we know this person. That helped. The warm intro was certainly helped get them in the process. But the other thing is, accountants know accountants. Recruiters know recruiters. Public health people know public health people. Your network is such a valuable source of leads because the job market is so niche. So when you're thinking about your hypothesis, it does need to be niched in to that kind of organization, that sector that is specific, so we can test that. And some of this will depend on where you're at in your career, the leveling, your specific experience, about how niche it needs to go. But in general, I would think most people start too broad and they need to really narrow in. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, I think that's right. And it goes right to the types of job seekers too. So the reason we have 3 fit hypotheses is there's nothing magical about 3, right? This is not just like, this is the only possible way we could have structured this. Basically, it's if you're only applying to one thing that's so out of your control because it's just, if that other organization is going to hire you or not, there's nothing you can do about it past a certain point, right? It's like, I need to work at X consulting firm, and that's the place that I need to be. You can do all you can to get into there. There's a limited amount you can do to actually make that happen. Conversely, a lot of you are super smart, caring, dedicated, multi-talented people who could theoretically do 100 jobs pretty well. The job search is one of those rare, truly winner-take-all experiences that still exists in the world. It doesn't do any good to be able to do something. I could theoretically do this job, right? I could figure it out on the job, it's gonna be fine, like all of that, because you're up against so many other people, and somebody is gonna be somebody who this is like their real fit for, they're made for this, like this is everything coming together for them. Your task is to get to that for yourself. So this is why we do the 3, is take it down from 100 and bring it up from the one true job that you're going for, right? Yeah. The idea is take into account your best guess at what makes sense as fit. So this is not 3, a lot of coaching exercises will be like the 3 dream things that I would love to do. These should be hyper-realistic, using all of your best judgment of what would I like to do and where do I honestly think there's a market for it. So start your hypotheses with that realism, and then what you're going to do is test it. So we can go into the validation networking. If we can advance the slide, please. Yeah, so the exact steps for this validation networking, and this is going to be a little bit different than the kind of networking that you're used to. So some people have a very transactional approach to networking, right? And a lot of people have this approach and don't realize they have this approach. So it's, I'm going to find places that I want to work, and then I'm going to go on LinkedIn, and I'm going to find people who work there, and I'm going to see if I have any connections with them. And if I don't, I'm going to still message them and just say, hey, I've already applied. Can you flag my application? So how many people are doing something like that now? I'd just like to see like a show of hands, even if it's, a little bit, okay. Yeah, a little bit something like that. There's also this other kind of networking that you might be familiar with, which is like the kind of informational networking, so a coffee chat, all of this kind of stuff. And it's a lot of people who are in your current circles a lot of the time for that kind of a thing. Or it's, I want to talk to somebody and something I'm thinking about. But at the end of the day, it's still this so that I can connect with them and then I can give them my CV and then they can get me a job there. And what you see is the walls start coming up, right? So this is a very low return kind of networking because the walls come up. People don't want to risk their political capital, especially in this kind of a job market, on a random person who just messaged them on LinkedIn, or on someone who somebody said is a nice person to talk to. Can you please help them out by having coffee with them? These are, they don't hurt your networking. They're just not the best marginal use of your time. Just in all frankness and all transparency, they just aren't the best use of your time. So what you do instead is, for each of those hypotheses, so if we can go back to the previous slide, actually, I just want to illustrate this with a real hypothesis. So these take the form of a type of job title. So it doesn't have to be only that exact job title, but put down something that's pretty specific here. So this might be, you've done a lot of communications type stuff, you've done a lot of report writing, you've done a lot of M&E, you've done a lot of external communications, whatever that is. It might be, okay, I think a communications director at let's say a biotech startup. You have a health background, you're interested in going to something kind of adjacent to that. Biotech is an industry that's fascinated you, it still has some purpose drive behind it. So this might be your hypothesis, and then we can go back to the.
Yep.
So what you want to do with that is talk to 5 people for each hypothesis. So communications director at a biotech startup. What you want to do is start with hopefully your warm connections. I know it doesn't seem like you might know a lot of people in the biotech space, but I promise that somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who is really in this space and can tell you that. And to the previous question of who to take the advice on your weaknesses from, this is that moment. So this is people who actually know something about this. So you start with your inner circle or warm connections from now, and then what you say here is that you're doing a research project. So you're doing market research, you're trying to get an understanding of what this space looks like, what biotech communications directors do, and you want to talk to people, and you can even be explicit about this of, I'm very much not trying to apply to their company. This is very strictly a market research exercise for me, but being more explicit about that actually helps with people's walls coming down, right? Because they want to help job seekers. They don't want to put their own capital at their workplace on the line for someone they don't know. Again, be entirely non-transactional. Embrace your inner researcher. So I know a lot of people here have a research background, and this is a very common skill set for our space. A lot of people also have a kind of a journalistic mindset and attitude too, of that inner kind of investigative journalist kind of a thing. Pretend you're writing a paper, pretend you're writing a story on what communications directors at biotech startups do, what that whole space is all about. We'll give you specific questions in a moment to ask here. Your goal is to learn everything you can about that from people who actually know something about it, to the previous question. It doesn't matter what your cousin thinks about biotech startups. It doesn't matter what, your colleague from your current job that's not a biotech startup thinks about biotech startups, unless they have some sort of experience with that. And what you're trying to do is get one person closer per conversation until you're circling biotech startup communications functions. And so you go, I don't know anyone at a biotech startup. I actually do know people at a biotech startup. So that's like one thing of, I've already made a connection to somebody at a biotech startup for somebody. And it was somebody that we did a wine class with a year ago, right? And it was just, they work at a biotech startup, and it was able to make a connection for someone to that. It might say, okay, I don't know anyone there. Spencer might know somebody there. Spencer, do you know anyone at a biotech startup I could talk to about, I'm really trying to understand that space. I'm not looking for an in at their particular company. So you do that. Spencer connects you to somebody there. You talk to somebody there. They might not be a communications director at a biotech startup, but they work with biotech startups in some capacity. You talk to them. You have this conversation. You say, is there somebody else I can connect with who is a little bit closer to this? Again, the same kind of a research conversation. By 2 or 3 people, you're going to be there. And your goal is to talk to 5 people before you start applying to that space. And that can be really challenging for people, right? Of, that's going to take forever. There's no way I can do that. It's not a time limit. It's a gate. It's a number of people to talk to. And the reason we suggest doing this is because when you know from insiders about a space, when you know about what that whole market looks like, You are so much more likely to know what you're doing and to land something in there than applying without that information, being reactive, applying from openings on jobs. So I think the next one we can, yeah, please.
Yeah, can I speak on this a little bit? So, a lot of the work that I do with my clients at the talent agency is I am networking on their behalf, and I am making introductions for them that are useful, right? I'm doing this research. I'm trying to identify who is the person that you should be talking to and for what reason. And anytime I make an introduction between a client and someone else, it's always, it's a favor for both sides, right? And as you have these conversations, if there is fit for you, if there is like an opportunity, that's often we get nervous about, oh, you're asking me to do all this stuff. Where is the point where I actually apply for the job and get hired? The opportunities will reveal themselves as you get close to something where there is a match, right? For most people, receiving your materials, talking to you about your job hunt is a little bit of a burden. But for the person that you can really help, the place where you belong, talking to you is a gift, right? There is a group of people out there who want to get connected to you. And to Dan's point about, well, the research on this, we all know 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation. You're only 6 hops from any human on planet Earth. And when we talk about the job market, you're 2 or 3 hops away from anybody who'd be relevant to your job hunt. You are shockingly close within your existing network to whatever your endpoint is, if you're willing to start getting a step closer, really doing this fact-finding, learning who's in your network who could get you closer to what you're trying to do. It is, and again, this might not feel like a natural instinct. It certainly wasn't for me before I had to do this for a living, but you would be surprised how close you are to the kind of the sector, the niche of your hypothesis, even if you are trying to make a transition.
So a big thing that came up this was the process that for most of the people I talked to in these pro bono sessions, this was the most salient first step in this process was you've probably already done a little bit of soul searching on strengths and fears and all of that, and it's important to go back and do that properly and really get to that. But this is a really tangible first step. So if we can go to the next slide, there's some, the big question that came up over and over again was, this sounds interesting, I want to do this, what do I ask? So we came up with these really brass tacks questions. Embrace your inner journalist, embrace your inner researcher. These are not prescriptive, you don't have to ask these, but these are a good place to start with it. So again, we're going to send you all of these slides after too, so you'll have access to these questions. First one is, what are the job titles for this kind of work? So what you want to do in these conversations, it's very much a researcher, very much a journalist kind of a vibe. It's, this is a little bit about my background. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I'm really trying to figure out my fit in this market and more about what this market looks like. I think what I do would be called communications director. Does that track? What other kinds of functions do similar work? And you might learn that these are actually PR people, right? You might learn that these are called something else that you didn't know existed, and it's a slight tweak. You might find that a director there is way higher or way lower than it is for you currently, right? This may be a VP, this may be a communications manager, and figuring out that leveling. Which organizations are in this space? So we have a tendency to go to household names, right? We have a tendency to go to, okay, I'm gonna go to this place that I know because it's famous and I know it from just being a human who knows things about different job sectors, so I'm gonna apply to McKinsey, right? I'm gonna apply to Gates Foundation. I'm gonna apply to, Google. It's all these things that like everyone knows what they are. Might be similar in the biotech space, right? There might be a place that you know off the top of your head, and we get locked into this idea, right? This is the place I need to apply to. Figuring out places that you have never heard of is going to get you out of this commodity job search. Skill sets, experience, education. This is where you want to ask, what do you think is essential versus nice to have? So there's a big rush now to feel productive. We have this feeling productive versus being productive thing, right? Feel productive by getting an expensive certificate or something. And I'm not saying that's a bad idea by any means. Vet that with people who work in that space before you decrease your runway by spending $5,000 getting a certificate, right, that you may or may not need for that particular space. And if you do need it, it could be a great investment, but know from them, and again, not from your friends, not from your family, not from your former colleagues, know from people who know that space. Main problem or opportunity, this is sometimes called the jobs to be done. So I'm not sure if people have heard of this kind of framing in the innovation space before, but it's the idea of the job description is going to list a bunch of responsibilities. And it's going to be a laundry list of like everything that some HR person thought was nice to have, plus everything that the hiring team thought was nice to have. And it's very tough to suss out what is actually critical here. Why are they paying someone $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 to do this? And it's not because they came up with this laundry list of things and they feel like giving away money. It's that there's an underlying core task or a few core tasks that are really essential to this, and getting to those is key. And then this final question is super helpful to people. So this is to the weaknesses point. Please be brutally honest is a great framing. It's tough to say. And knowing that you're separating this out from your identity. This is not a reflection on you. This is asking people who work in this space, I know that you're a kind, nice person. Thank you for meeting with me. It's going to really help me if you can be brutally honest about where you see my fit for this, where you see red flags, what stands out to you as really strong, what stands out to you as something that I'm either not explaining right, you don't understand what I'm talking about, or you feel like I'm missing. And then what you can do is take that information, and it might be, you know what, I've actually done that, but it's just not coming through on how I'm talking about it. Or it might be, this place is really looking for someone who's come up through this industry, and it's probably not a good use of my marginal application time to apply here.
Cool. The Winston Churchill quote about England and America, they're two countries divided by a common language, and I think we see that with people in transition, right? These sectors, they use such different jargon or lingo to talk about work which is similar. And so all of these things, you may feel like, oh, I already know this. I have a sense of what this is. I understand this just from where I have been in my space. But I would just challenge you to question what you actually do know about the new sector. Like, they might be using words, they're using the same words, but they have a completely different meaning. And when you can get to what they actually mean with what they're saying, well, how do they call the work that you're good at? That's not a trivial question to answer. And this kind of fact-finding, really looking, honestly asking, well, what is this? What does this look like in another space? Not assuming we already have the answers. This is a very, very powerful thing just because the job market is both broader than we can ever imagine. To Dan's point, there's so many organizations out there that you've never heard of that need someone exactly like you, but they're maybe talking about the work in a way that's completely different than how your old sector talked about it. Often to sell you something, right? Like, many people will say that you just, use AI to rewrite your resume, and you're going to beat the ATS by jamming it with as many keywords as you can. And there is something to writing a resume that's understandable, but it's a human. It's a human that's going to read your materials. At some point, some human has to look at it. She's probably very busy. I talk about Sarah from HR in a lot of my talks. She has 200 resumes to review before lunch. She's not an expert in your field. She really wants to hire someone terrific for this, but the main thing she wants to do is not get yelled at the hiring manager by putting forward someone who's like a complete waste of his time in the interview. And we're writing our resume for her. It should be simple. It should be easy to read. It should be a joy to read. And I've got a template y'all can use that sort of is written for a human to read and digest. And in my experience, that's a much better approach to a resume writing than anything which is more complicated than that. A resume, like we talked about, you have the fit hypotheses. You may have multiple drafts. I don't think you need to rewrite your resume for every single job, and if you are, it may be telling you that you're in that type 2 approach where you're just applying for everything that you can. If you've got to do a full rewrite for everything that you're applying for, it's probably the hypothesis is not quite dialed in. So you might have a couple different resume drafts, 3 different drafts, but you won't need one for every single application. And you're going to use the framing, the language and the direction of it that's informed by your fact-finding. It's informed by what you learned from your networking. And then finally, people talk about what goes on a resume. We talked a lot about narratives and stories, right? We want to tell a story with the doc, with the materials. And the story is, I'm an incredibly strong fit for this job, right? My whole career has led me to this moment, and you should hire me. And so each bullet sort of tells a story as well. So it doesn't always need a metric, but metrics are good because they are easy to understand. $1 million, if I put, I saved my company $1 million, you can visualize a pile of money. You can see in your mind, what $1 million looks like. It feels like it's powerful, not because the number really means anything, but for its storytelling ability. And so think about the stories. What did you do? What was different in the world because of your work? How did your work help somebody? How did your work change something? Why did your work matter, and to who? That's often those are the questions that lead to really powerful resume content. And my template sort of sets this up, gives you a few kind of a framework that you can use to sort of make those changes. And again, only apply to roles where you feel like you're an incredibly strong fit. It's in your hypothesis. You have a good reason to think, even if 300 people apply for this, they should go with me. I would be in that. I should at least make the short list. Okay, review your results. So how many of you guys are already tracking everything you apply for? You've got that written down. Okay, fantastic. I think that's a great first step, because if you don't track, you don't have a way to understand how things are going, right? You can't. So look at your different fit hypotheses and see how often am I getting a callback. And with my clients, we recommend this 10%. Again, given the market dynamics, it may be a little bit lower right now, but certainly if you apply for 30 jobs and nobody has called you back, it's a signal that maybe we need to workshop the hypothesis and we need to do a little bit more networking. Again, these are all just these are frameworks, these are numbers. Numbers are good storytelling devices. I'm not saying that 30 and 10% are, the gospel, but use these as heuristics to hold on to, right? And the other thing is, maybe you're surprised at this callback rate. 10%, that means 9 out of 10 times you're fully on target. You're locked in on exactly the kind of jobs that you should be going out for. Even under that case, still most of the time the answer is going to be no. Still most of the time the answer is going to be we're not going to call you back. And that can be a really interesting situation to be in, right? Even success is mostly made of a failure. And maybe if you're a baseball fan, or we can think about this in so many different domains, right? Best hitter of all time missed 7 out of 10 pitches, right? Really good sales guys, they brag about a close rate of 1 in 4 prospects are closed. Really great recruiters on LinkedIn, headhunters, they're going out into the talent market and they're looking to invite people to apply for a job. Those guys are amazing if they can get 35%. 6 out of 10 times the job seeker or the candidate says, no, thank you, I'm not going to apply for this. Don't feel bad if you're not getting called back. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? This is why we have to apply to a few more things. So if you're that type 1 person where you're hesitant to get the applications out, you don't have enough data to say whether you're on target or not. So keep applying. Okay. So we had this heart-to-heart. We decided to keep hunting, and Maribel really wanted to do something programmatic, right? We knew that she was a networker, a network builder, and she started calling up people that she had met in the foundation, doing this gender work that so moved her, people that she had met, folks that she had funded. And through those conversations, she ended up talking to an executive director that wasn't hiring for something right that moment, but knew something was coming online. She was planning to make a hire a couple months down the road. People talk about the hidden job market, how to apply for jobs before they meet the public, they're posted online before there's this open call. This is it. This networking, it's all just people. People who have problems they're trying to solve at work. And Maribel could solve the problem that this executive director needed to solve. She needed someone who was technical, was programmatic, was in this space. And she came into that process. She did go through an interview process, but it was clear from the jump that this executive director wanted to hire her. And she came out of the process with a promotion from going from manager to director, more money, and an organization that really values both her specific expertise and the direction she's trying to take her career. And I think that there is, even now, even with the market the way it is, you likely have a skill, a set of skills. You likely have something that you bring to the table that's as valuable as what Maribel had. There is a place. There are a group of people out there who really need what you can do. And I hope that each of you find a way to, I hope you continue to focus on those jobs that are pro-social, that have a strong social impact. Do whatever you need to do, whatever hunt that you're on, be on that hunt. But I hope that you continue to focus on doing those things that make a difference for people. Because we are all better off if you choose to spend your time and talents on that kind of work. All right. Think creative, do your networking, and where I wrote this thing a few weeks ago. There's no such thing as transferable skills. When we focus on our transferable skills, we tend to, like we talked about earlier in the talk, we tend to go too broad and waste our time on things that can't close. But it is never too late for a transformation. It's never too late to do something different. It's never too late to make a pivot. And this, for me, has been a pivot. I was laid off at the height of COVID at a time when the economy shut down. No one was hiring recruiters. And I thought that I had wasted the last 10 years of my life. I was like, what have I done? How am I going to feed my family? And 5 years on, I'm happier. I am making more money. I am in a much better situation than I ever have been. But it did take time. It took time to do that transformation, to find a job that really gave me what I want. But it's there. And so wherever you're at today, know that most people stick this landing. Most people find the way forward. And you will. I think you will too. Thank you guys for coming out. We really appreciate it.
So big thanks to the Open GovHub team for having us and contributing this space. Thank you all for coming out. We're going to open up to Q&A. I know some of you might have to leave. We're actually going to shut off the recording for the Q&A portion so you can ask